the last HCOG meeting, and there will not be an HCOG meeting in September. So I'll bring back information in November after the October meeting.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's been summertime, so a lot of the meetings are being pushed to the fall. So, all right, so that is our committee assignment. So next up is our staff report.
I will turn it over to Lieutenant McCall, who's on the Zoom call.
Hi, good evening. Glad to be here. Sorry, I've missed the last couple of these as I think with some trainings and vacations and such. So I'm glad to be able to get in here tonight. Our typical stats that I know get sent out usually each month by our administrative secretary and what I most commonly report out on. Unfortunately, we're short-staffed in records just like most other places, and she's been assigned a couple of days a week helping out at our main station. So she did not have those stats completed for the month of August, but in looking at the base numbers that she did have in there altogether, it looked like calls for service in general in the greater Trinidad area and obviously the city itself were down by about 25 or so calls from the previous month. But a couple of the felony investigations and misdemeanor investigations, I think those numbers were up a little bit from the previous month. With that being said, in reviewing of the stats that are limited to within the city limits of Trinidad itself for the month of August, looks like we had a total of 42 calls that were inside the city limits. Almost half of those were transfers to other agencies. So that would be things like a medical aid or something like that comes into our dispatch and then gets transferred off to medical or fire. There were 17 of those for the month of August. We had 3 patrol checks, 3 dispatch reports, a dispatch report typically being something that's not, at least on its face value, criminal, and it's not something that somebody's necessarily wanting a deputy for, but they want it just documented in the system that they're calling about it. So there was 3 of those. We had 3 logged Trinidad patrols, just designated as people that had put themselves out there patrolling around, which obviously is not the limited number of times that there was actually deputies in Trinidad, but just those that were logged under that call type. We had a couple of agency assists, a couple of welfare check calls, and then the rest of the call types reported in here were 1 each of just things like noise complaints, 911 misdial, abandoned vehicle, an alarm call, 1 burglary call, 1 foot patrol, 1 intoxicated subject, 1 suspicious person call, 1 vandalism, and 1 vehicle investigation. And that pretty much rounds out the call volume and type that was logged for the month of August within the city limits itself. And then for what it's worth on there, as those stats are combined and put out, it looks like Thursday and Friday were typically the busiest days of the week by incident count, with the early afternoon hours being the busier time of day for our end, at least, that is.
Was the drop in crime month over month, was that unique to Trinidad, or do you know, Lieutenant McCall, was that also county that the crime stats kind of went down?
I don't know because I haven't looked at the other stats for the other areas as far as those numbers. I'm trying to remember from looking. I did look at Blue Lakes yesterday, and I'm trying to remember now. I'm pretty sure their overall call for service was down a little bit as well. Not quite as didn't see quite the drop. I think that Trinidad did, but theirs was down a little bit as well. But yeah, I've not actually compared that to any of the other stats for the month to see if that was a trend everywhere for the most part, or if it was a little more specific to your guys' area.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting about Blue Lake. So,
can I interrupt with a quick question? Is Officer McCall going to be on the whole meeting, or is he just giving his report and leaving? I have one of the items that I need to bring up
is related to law enforcement.
Right.
What,
Yeah, he's only here right now for.
Could I address it?
Yes, as soon as we finish with the council, then we turn it to the public access.
okay, so I will make sure that we give you an opportunity to ask your question.
Yes, right. I had two items.
Two items.
That are not related to each other.
Okay,
One of them definitely I would like to have the sheriff's input on.
okay. So we'll finish first with any council questions and then go to members of the public, and then we'll go to the staff report so that we can make sure that we accommodate that. So any questions, other questions from council? Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant McCall. It sounds like we also have a question from a member of the public, or two comments or questions. So if I can ask you to come up to the podium, please, so everyone online can hear you, that would be great.
Hi, yeah, I'm Don Allen. I live in West Haven, and I'm on the board of the Trinidad Coastal Land Trust. So our interim executive director received a call from a member of the public about some behavior at Baker Beach. It's not the first time we have gotten calls similar to this, but the behavior reported is extremely disturbing. It's lewd behavior amongst a group of men. I will leave it at that. These are men that are in the nude and participating in acts that shouldn't be done in public. And so I didn't have direct experience with this event that happened just within the last couple of weeks, but the person who contacted us seemed to be indicating that the sheriff's department was not interested and would not come and do anything. So as a land trust, we don't want that kind of behavior happening on our property. We've talked about maybe just posting the public resources code that might cover that kind of behavior. But it's a little bit awkward when you're putting a sign out in public, trying to tell people not to do something that they should have the common sense to not do anyway. So I don't know if a report was filed with the sheriff's department, but from past experience, what we've heard is that unless the sheriff happens to be in town and happens to be able to respond, and they may not even want to respond because it's at Baker Beach, got a steep trail and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we're kind of at a loss as to what to do. We've also been told that there's kind of one person who stands like a security guard at the top of the trail and tries to prevent people from going down there. So anyway, I just want to bring that to the attention.
And the person who's standing at the top of the trail, just for clarification, this is not someone they're not trying to help. They're someone
they are trying to prevent people from going down there and disturbing this group activity. This group of men, yes.
Well, I know you have two items. Shall we have Lieutenant McCall maybe respond to that, and then
if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Lieutenant McCall, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is the first that I've heard of that, or at least of that type of alleged activity occurring at the beach. It kind of sounds like this is, from what I'm gathering here, if I didn't misunderstand, it sounds like this has been more than a single occurrence. Is that accurate from what you understand, at least?
That's right.
Okay. Obviously, if there's people, I know that sometimes we have areas like that where nudity or whatever is allowed or kind of happenstance in general. But obviously, if we could get into the realm of acts that are occurring that are lewd, then that kind of changes the game. Obviously, my suggestion obviously is call or encourage people to call when that's happening. Obviously, if they have somebody looking out up there, they know they're calling. Sometimes it may be difficult if we get there and they're gone, but if we can, have an idea when it's occurring. Understandably that sometimes if there's other in progress calls going on, it may slow us down on when we can get there, and getting there in a timely fashion to where maybe they're still there and then this is occurring. But it's like anything else, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if the more that people, when they see that type of thing going on, are encouraged to call it in. It's helpful for us that it shows that, hey, we have this issue here. This was not just a one-off incident, and we need to do what we can to try and curb this. So I don't know if there seems to be time of the day or day of the week, if this is, with what kind of frequency this may be occurring. But that type of information that kind of can help us narrow down our enforcement is obviously always helpful as well.
Yeah, I do know that it happens during the day, during the sunny part of the day, the warm part of the day. I don't know the frequency, but this is probably at least the third incident I've heard of in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, so should we call the dispatch number, like the 441 number in Eureka? I mean, it didn't seem like might not be appropriate for a 911 call, but just curious, what's the best way to contact the sheriff's department?
Yeah, I mean, something like that where there's typically we try and discourage within reason if it's not something that seems like some kind of immediate threat to life or property, to try and call the public number just to keep from 911 lines being burdened down with too many 911 calls if it's not like an in progress emergency. Obviously, it's one of those things, if people are having a hard time getting through and there's something going on right then and they call that way, our dispatch will usually just have them transfer over to another line so that it doesn't do it. So, but yes, calling the Eureka office is going to be the best. While during the daytime, we typically would have an administrative secretary at the McKinleyville station, and she can create that call for service. As I was mentioning earlier in the meeting, due to our record staffing, she is a couple of days a week now working out of main station. So on those days, there's not going to be any staff that's at least going to be guaranteed to be there and regularly answering the phone. So calling the Eureka office is the best way to ensure that you're actually going to get a hold of a live person to take that call and not end up having to leave a message or something like that, which could potentially end up not getting checked for a day, depending on when it comes in.
Okay, thank you. What we are planning on doing is just posting the number and just saying something to the effect of, if you see any, not sure if we figure out the wording, but any behavior that's inappropriate, call sheriff's office.
That number.
Or something like that.
Is there any advantage, Lieutenant McCall, for enforcement to having signs posted? Because I know in the past, like some of the things that we've had in the city, it's been suggested that we have signs so that then law enforcement can say they are enforcing a code or a sign, a noticed issue.
Well, and if I could answer that, and I'd love to hear from Officer McCall too, but the person who notified us about the complaint, they gave us the penal section code that we could post there and just say that this kind of behavior is, and then a number, if you see behavior like this, call this number. Apparently there was a sign put there, not necessarily with the board approval, but it basically was encouraging respectful behavior among members of the beach community, with a recognition that is considered a clothing optional beach, but that doesn't necessarily translate into good behavior. So anyway, that's the kind of our plan right now, is to put up a sign with that code section on it and a number to call if people see that, because I see families there all the time, and I would be quite bothered to know that was happening. Like my kids were down there, if anyone's down there, it's just not appropriate. So thank you, Officer McCall. Thank you for allowing me that, and I'll wait till you want me on the second.
Okay, so did you have another question for Lieutenant McCall?
Lieutenant McCall.
Items for the floor? Okay,
yeah.
We'll get to that in just a sec. Thank you very much.
And Lieutenant McCall, is there anything else that you needed to add? Otherwise, I'll move into my staff here.
No, nothing else that I can think of, sir.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so regarding the staff activity report, which is included in the packet, the first item was regarding the Bandwidth Trail, which the Coastal Commission heard on September 6th in Eureka. And the commission did not find a substantial issue to reopen the trail at this time. However, they have given us 6 months 6 additional months to address trail closure and try to find if there is a way to reopen. Did have a happening on Monday. The city planner and the city engineer, so planning and meeting coastal commission, Brigade office coming up probably next week. Also, Sarah, the insurance company has reassessed the condition of the trail at the August 22nd meeting. I'm sorry, on August 22nd, not on August 22nd, myself and representative from Sarah met at the trail, and we talked about the current trail close signs. They suggested to keep those in place due to the trail's existing condition. Depending on any potential improvements, the trail could be reopened if determined to be safe in the future. And there's the water rate study, which we have gotten Rural Community Assistance Corporation, RCAC, in order to provide a water rate analysis for us. This is done through USDA funding, so it's not costing the city enterprise fund in the study. Gabe has prepared this. Gabe is our contact point for RCAC because they're asking for a number of records from town hall. And as a result, Gabe has been gathering all that information and providing it to them. And they'd like to see it ideally by September 15th. In here, Dave has also indicated that the water rate study report date, and then also the capital improvement plan and 5-year budget, and then deliverables that they have. So one is on our end, September 15th. The other one is to conduct a rating process. Dave, do you have anything to add to that? No. So Ben had mentioned Leffingwell Street, said that we have the flow measurement to report at this meeting. Yesterday at about 4:30, I got the number as far as the measurement of the flow in Leffingwell Street, and it was 0.788 CFS. At 0.86 CFS, we are to report to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So this is the first time it came down below. As a result, I did call we have from the Department of Fish and Wildlife today. I got his voicemail, left him a message, and asked him to call me back, which probably called in places that are outside of self-service. So in addition to that, regarding this particular item, we have the water shortage contingency plan that was prepared by the city a couple of years ago in 2021. And technically, since we're under 0.86, we fall under stage 2. And under stage 2 is a water shortage warning. And as a result, what we have done in the past is that we requested that homeowners try not to water their lawn if they can. If nothing else, at least to cut back on the water. And then also try not to wash their car during this period of stage 2. In addition to that, it's recommended, and I see one of our restaurant owners here, that when water is being requested, that you could provide it in the restaurant, but only upon request and not to automatically place it. So those are measures we will be taking. So ideally what we'll do is post it on our website and also send a letter to the residents notifying them.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
You said since the last time this happened, when was the last?
In 2020. So in 2021, we did reach the stage 2. And at that time, Richard Columbus was on our council. And he volunteered to prepare the cards and the sticker. So there's a sticker that we would send like on the water bill, notify people what stage we're in. So we have the water billing, we're still halfway through. It's like, so send either a letter or a card. Just a note of stage 2, and that we're suggesting they cut back on yards, and at the same time to
Yeah, I think maybe the communication, we can do a banner on the website as well now because we have that new functionality, and just let people know that we really are in a situation at stage 2 where, we actually called it mandatory restrictions. So it's actually pretty serious. So I think we need to just make it clear that, it's not like we're going to go around and police people, but it's, we're below the threshold, whereby we have to report to Fish and Wildlife. And my understanding is we get to a certain point and we're not supposed to take any more water, but we probably would never be held to that, hopefully, but yeah.
Yeah, and fortunately that number is until 0.15.
Okay.
And
we got a ways to go.
We've never gone down below 0.5 that I'm aware of. And one of the things to let the community know is that number one, we would like to get voluntary cooperation as much as possible from the community before we have to require people. But on the other hand, generally speaking, the base flow in the creek is significant enough that fortunately we've been able to ride through any past issues that we've had into the creek.
Yeah, it seems like I would be interested in the last time when it happened. So maybe we can look at that. But because it's in September now, so
it happens every year at this time, virtually. Last year was strange because we had a lot of rain in April and May, and June even. But since I've been paying attention, it's every year at this time. September and October are months that we need to kind of
it's always
be more aware.
I just didn't happen this early in September. So okay, well,
at least that's
I agree.
Yeah,
it's a pretty regular thing about now we start worrying.
Yeah. So I think
this year was really like was mentioned. Yeah, exactly. And this year it happened a little bit earlier than last year. We were hoping after all the rain we got in December, and it was.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's no drought declared at this point. Usually, when this happens, there's a drought, level as well. So.
Well, maybe our creek is sort of like like the groundhog. It's sort of like tells people before everybody else sort of does.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully it's not going to be the precursor of or statewide drought. Either way, we need to address it, and we'll send a letter out.
And maybe the flow readings. I don't know how we're doing them monthly. Do we go to weekly?
Yeah, we'll do them more frequently. Definitely, yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And you have are there any other questions about that from the council? And then you can, Eli will finish his staff report and then public comments.
Okay. So the other thing in the staff report is that the Chamber of Commerce is having what they call their fish feast, which will be happening on Saturday, October 7th. They'll be utilizing the Trinidad School parking lot as well as Town Hall. The two local bands perform outdoors. And and we will not be closing the street. So it wouldn't be like last year and this year, we specifically are moving forward with having it on a lower scale, basically for the community and the greater community, rather than closing the street, making it such a big event where the residents feel like it's too cumbersome city, because we are a small city. Basically, we just have one major thoroughfare city. So closing that really, one of the things we're sorry, we don't want to direct traffic, into the other areas that already have some issues. And the other one is that next week I will be going to the annual League of Cities, California Cities Conference in Sacramento. So that's all that I have. If you have any other questions.
Any other questions for Eli from the council? Okay. Are there any public questions or comments regarding the staff report?
Sorry, I can't resist.
Please, Don.
Yeah, Don Allen, West Haven. The good news is that once we get to equinox in like 2 weeks, the evapotranspiration rate goes way down, and you'll see the creek actually rebound a little bit. So even without rain, just a lack of the slowdown in evapotranspiration around the equinox really helps. I've had personal experience with this on a stream restoration project. Sorry, I forgot the other thing I was going to say, but I'll get back to it later. But
Call you back up if you think of it. Just raise your hand. All right. So with that, we're going to move to items from the floor. Oh, did you have a question, Bryce?
Yeah,
to the staff
was covered in the report, but if it's not, it should be noted anyway. And that is Eli's proposed contract. Section 13.
That's in our consent agenda.
Okay, well, the second to the last sentence, there's a typographical error there. It says with, or should be within.
Okay. Good to know.
That's an important difference.
Okay, thank you. We'll look at that as you get to the consent agenda. Thank you, Bryce. Okay, so at this time, we're items from the floor. This is the time when public can make comments on things that are not on tonight's agenda. Generally up to 3 minutes. We'll start with Don. And then I saw
You guys know who I am now.
Yeah,
but this for the record, Don Allen.
as her hand up, I don't know if she wanted to speak.
Oh, okay.
My report before we get into the items from the board.
Okay, let's double check. Jackie, did you have a question about the staff report or a comment about that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, John, can you mind holding just 1 minute?
I was having a hard time hearing Eli regarding where we were at and what the stage 2 trigger is for the water. If he could go over that and speak a little bit louder into the mic.
Absolutely.
Please.
Thank Eli, do you mind kind of running through that?
Yeah, I will do that, and I hope it's up better. So when we get into a stage 2, we have what's called the water shortage warning, which we will be sending to all the residents, probably on a cardstock versus a letter. Several things we're going to be requesting are, number one, that we would like people to voluntarily cut back on their overall usage of water. Number two, that we'd like people to cut back on watering their landscaping. And number three, that we'd like people to avoid washing their cars. And then number four, asking restaurants that when they do provide water, they do it only upon request of the patron in the restaurant to in front of everyone in the restaurant. If you have any further questions, and hopefully you're able to hear me.
I was asking on the numerical level you said we were at, or what the threshold was for stage 2. I couldn't hear that, and where we are now.
Yeah, so the threshold is 0.86. At 0.86, we are to report it to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which I did this morning. And we are currently at 0.788 CFS for the flow.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Don, I think you had a public comment for open.
Yeah, and it's regarding trail amenities. And I noticed this on Trinidad Head, and just before the meeting, I was sitting down at the overlook on the harbor, and I noticed the benches there. You feel like a little kid. My feet were swinging in the air. And the problem with all these benches is that they were put in on sloping ground. And whenever you do that, just people sitting there, they kick the gravel away. So anytime you put in a bench, you have to have a level pad to put that bench in. And, you know, you go all the way around Trinidad Head, every one of those benches is pretty much in the same situation as the ones down by the Memorial Lighthouse. So I don't know if the city has money to do trail maintenance, but it would be a relatively easy fix, especially if you're building the bench, you know, from scratch, and you just make sure you put in, you can use pressure treated 4x8 Doug fir, and, you know, make a little flat pad so that when people are sitting there, their feet aren't kicking the gravel away, because it's hard for people, especially old people, to sit on a bench where, you know, they kind of need a step stool or something to actually get up on the bench. Anyway, it's probably something I should bring up with the Trinidad Trails Council. I'm not sure what the, you know, what the city's mechanism is for.
You just did.
You just did. I was just going to say, Jack, Chair, I don't know if you want to take a minute, Jack.
I'll just say that we do have a whole PowerPoint that we're going to be looking at in the next month. We have it out there. It's on our website. Can that be reached, or is that not there? No, anyway, we
Put it there if it's not there already.
can
So
put that up, and that goes over all the benches. It just looks at the benches where they are, and what they overlook, and we discovered that they're in pretty bad shape, or there are a lot of them. And so there is, people have purchased plaques on all of them at some point in time, and they're all late. I mean, they're all been well over time getting new ones in. So over next year to be able to open that up and begin seeing people who would like to put those back together. So it should all be out there, but I'd love to have you speak to me or come to the meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, is the Trail Committee active these days?
It is. We'll be meeting next month.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to make it. And yeah, I kind of feel bad. Like I feel like I should have been going to these for years, but I had a lot of other volunteer commitments that I kind of cut back a little bit on. So yeah, anyway.
Let me know when I get the information.
Great, thanks, Jack.
thank you. Are there other items from the floor?
Everyone, my name is Dick Bruce, 780 Underwood Drive. I'm also the chair of the STR Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to let council know and public know that we're having a meeting on Monday, October 16th at 6 p.m. First in-person meeting that we've had. Open. I would encourage everyone in attendance here and everyone in the community, anybody listening in, love to get some input from the community in terms of how with the SDRs and all that here. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'd just like to encourage participation because we watch in the last.
You said 6 p.m., Dick?
6 p.m.
Okay.
That's correct. On Monday, October 6th.
Thanks.
And then I have a second item from the floor. Kind of dovetails staff for Bannock Trail. The city now has, my understanding, from the Coastal Commission, 6 months to come up with a plan to reopen the trail. Now, a temporary closure is for a year. I would really like to see the city do whatever it can to get the Bannock Trail open.
Thank you. And we'll looking, just checking our city calendar, and the STR meeting is on the city calendar as well. So folks can go there and click in, and we'll upload that the documents as they become available.
Jackie's got it too.
Yes, Jackie, you have your hand raised?
I apologize, but I could not hear what Dick was saying hardly at all. Can someone paraphrase briefly?
Sure, yeah. So there's a short-term rental committee meeting at 6 p.m. on October 16th. And that will also be posted on the city calendar with the associated documents. Can you hear me okay, Jackie?
Yes, I can hear you. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the second part was a request for the city to look at reopening the Van Wyck Trail.
Thank you.
I don't know if our podium might, maybe what I'll do is when folks come up, unfortunately, I'll have to ask everybody to just get really close to the mic. And thank you for letting us know. If anybody online is having trouble hearing, that's really important for us to know. So thank you for keeping us on that, Jackie, and we'll keep working on the mics here.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's just really important if folks do log in on Zoom, it's really important to be able to hear what's going on. So appreciate that. And everybody has different tones in their voice. I realize that, but it seems like on some folks, the volume is super low.
Okay. All right. So good reminder for all the counselors. We'll try to get close. Kissing my mic. Are there other public comments? Please.
Once again, I'd just like to know when the security guy is going to start his regular rounds, because we're in the second week of September now, and summer's over, and Labor Day's over, and just want to know an approximate time we can expect to see him.
He will be back this weekend, and Eli and I have confirmed that, and we're both going to be meeting with him to establish a good, consistent schedule after this unfortunate kind of break of the last, 6 to 8 weeks. So again, yes, apologies for that, but he will be back on duty.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Let me just go look online really quick. I don't see any other items from the floor, so I will bring it back to the council. And next on our list is the consent agenda. So are there any questions or comments about tonight's consent agenda?
I would actually like Bryce to tell us where the word is that he was referring to. I didn't catch it when I had it open. Please, that was not.
Ian, sorry for going out of order on that. Yes, section 13, second to the last sentence. And you'll see that it makes a lot more sense. It says within rather than.
Parties shall each comply, or it's the employer and employee agree. Employer and employee agree that they will at all times assist each other in defending any litigation involving the city of Trinidad, or employer's duties with employer. An employer agrees to defend employee against any claim or action against him arising out of an act or omission occurring with the scope. This doesn't sound like the right paragraph.
Within occurring
Within the scope of the employee's employment. Okay.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. And then we had another suggested change, which was that this agreement now would begin in September versus July.
Yeah, the first page.
Yeah. So if we approve because we can potentially approve the consent agenda, but with those two corrections. Yeah. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. Are there any other items from the consent that the councilors have questions on? And then going to the public. So are there questions about the consent agenda from the public? Dorothy, did you? What's that? Yeah, so let me close the council on this consent agenda for a moment. We'll go back to public comments for items from the floor. And Dorothy, you're up if you'd like to do that, and then we'll come back to the consent agenda and finish that.
May I ask if a permit was asked for and received, and I had to pay for mine when I took my trees down for the 4 trees that were removed over here? It's fine if they're removed, but the process is that you get a permit in this town. And when I had my trees removed from my backyard, not only did I have to get the permit, pay substantially for the permit, I had to agree to plant 4 more trees before they granted me permission to take my trees down. So I wanted to know about the permit process for across the street. Is that just a mea culpa or? Can you explain to me what happened over there? Not that it's wrong, but.
I don't believe a permit was obtained, but I will ask the city staff if they would like to comment on this, and then we can, okay. So I guess the answer is no, and then the city will take us under advisement. Okay, back to the consent agenda briefly. So I understand the council has no questions on the consent, so I'm going to go to the public. Are there any public comments about tonight's consent agenda? Changes, that sort of thing. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for a gentle motion.
Just real quick, you said effective, where's the July versus September? Sorry, August versus September. I see effective.
It's actually, everything in the contract is correct with September, except on the very first page, way at the top.
Oh, okay.
Within the heading. That was the only one I didn't catch.
Oh, okay.
I knew it was there somewhere.
Then I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the updated verbiage in section 13, with to within, and all dates in the contract with the city manager reflecting September 1 start date.
I'll second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that the consent agenda is approved unanimously. And that then brings us to the main part of tonight's meeting, which begins with our agenda item number 1, which is the continued discussion regarding traffic calming measures for View, Ocean, and Underwood. And I guess I would say to some extent it's traffic calming measures for Trinidad in general, but and so because we've kind of broadened the topic. And this is part of I guess I'd call it a 3-part series, because we spoke about maybe more. We spoke about it at the last meeting. We'll speak about it at the next meeting. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to you, Eli, if you want to kind of get us grounded on where the discussion should head.
Okay. So as was just mentioned, we'll be discussing this further at the next meeting. Josh Wolf from GHD, who is an engineer who specializes in our streets, is unavailable today, but will be available for our October meeting. So he will join us then. He's the one that mostly prepared the information that appears in the packet, along with staff, so we can work this together. And a lot of this information is reflecting, number one, what the cost would be for such traffic calming measures as speed humps. And we've gotten requests from, actually, that I'm aware of, a total of 9 streets in the city. And this picture that's up there, it would be considered a temporary street hump, which could be placed. We were originally talking about Ocean and View, and the concern in the city is that there's a lot of traffic that ends up, instead of continuing on Trinity, a lot of times they turn off of Trinity and return on either Ocean or View. Originally come on Ocean or View, and then end up using the other streets in the city. Usually we like to see the commercial traffic, especially, and the RVs utilize Main Street to Trinity Street to Edwards. And as a result, especially Ocean and View have been getting a lot of this extra traffic. So since then, Underwood had requested, because there's a curve in Underwood, and at that point, people sometimes don't see pedestrians with children walking on Underwood. Same thing has been mentioned about Edwards, especially with the curve on Edwards. We're completely utilize Lindo and Van Wyck and avoid going further down. Then we had a petition from Mary Road and also Himalaya. And then we had the letter that was asking about Main Street, Trinity, Edwards. So all together ended up being a total of 9 streets that I had counted. So there's several ways we can approach it. Number one, we definitely should be waiting until this next meeting in October to have Josh Humboldt present so we can address it further. But in the meantime, staff has put some signs up on several of these streets, meaning specifically Ocean and giving notice to the public that speed humps are being considered for those streets. As far as our approach would, number one, be doing a traffic study for streets in general. That would be the ideal situation. In addition to that, county has a speed hump policy. Ideally, we would have something similar to what the county would have, where we could be addressing speed humps, because a lot of people might feel like, why did you put it here? Why did you put it there? So getting a little more consistency. Beyond all of that, at least my initial feeling is that if we did not want to do the traffic study right now, didn't want to do the county policy right now, the only exception I would see is possibly Ocean, because they seem to be utilized more than others. Connect with Main Street and to eventually connect with Edward Street. Otherwise, I would suggest doing traffic studies for number one, the number of vehicles that are going on a street, and number two, for the speed of the vehicles that are going on the street. So that information could be done. And in the staff report, it does mention that between the county and Arcata, we might be able to get some equipment from them. So City Engineer Josh Wolf suggested the city consider requesting traffic data equipment from County Public Works for the city of Arcata to collect data to help zero in on the problem and target specific solutions on an objective basis. This equipment will gather traffic volumes, frequency, and speeds, and may prove useful in developing criteria similar to the County Public Works speed hump and installation policy. So anyway, these are all things to consider, but ideally when you do approach any problem and you want to reach a solution, gather data and then make that decision based on.
What was the price of this study?
For these particular, they're 5,000 to 6,000 each. Let me see if I have the data. Oh, for the traffic study, yeah. First of all, it was mentioned here about obtaining these from the county or Arcata. So we could ask them, if we could borrow it. And then we would place
the study is equipment. It isn't somebody. It isn't.
It's both. It's both.
Equipment.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. In this particular case, it would be like a hose. So when you go over the hose, it'll register how many vehicles are passing. And then if you have two hoses with a certain distance between them, then that'll help give you the speed between the two hoses.
About the length of the vehicle. The RVs are the size of the city street, and then there's pulling a car behind it too. We won't get lengths.
No, we wouldn't get the length, not with that equipment, right? So beyond that, and Josh at the next meeting could actually elaborate more on the, this is just a suggestion. We didn't obtain any particular costs for the traffic study. So he might be able to enlighten us a little bit more on that. But certainly, if we just borrow the equipment, there could be a minimal cost. You know, it wouldn't be like a formal, fancy, professional traffic study, but at least it will give us an indication of some information as to number of cars and the speed there at that point.
Just preliminarily, there's been such a response that it seems getting information would be the fairest way to proceed, even though it seems like you and Ocean take the hit, but that may be more perception than we would see.
Yeah, part of it is number of vehicles in general, but also part of it is possibly trying to discourage people from using View and Ocean to Trinity, and that's what they would mostly be avoiding, Trinity. On the other streets, yes, people might be speeding. Yes, there may be blind curves that need to be addressed to make it safer, but they're not being utilized from point A to point B as much as sure.
In addition to the, sorry, Jack, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about the humps themselves, but I think I was a little confused about how many, how many humps you would need for each road. Are we looking at just 2 humps on, if we did 2 roads, would we have 2 humps on it, or do they cross the road completely? You just put one single up down, is that right? So we're going to be ordering 4 for the 2 roads if we just did those 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just going to turn it over to Gabe because I think he's a little more versed as far as the side and everything. And we were talking earlier about the fact of actually having that, you don't end up just hitting one and then speeding. The 2 might come slow you down the street itself. I'll turn it to Gabe.
Thank you. The cost per speed hump, approximately $6,000. And they are 18 foot wide, 10.5 foot, let's call it deep. And so it'd be 1 hump would cover that street section. The county's policy, which I was just thumbing through here on the, can't really read it right now, but it's kind of small, but the county's policy addresses lengths and sort of best practices of streets. When 2 speed humps are ideal, and the patterns that drivers take, speeding up, stopping, and then just speeding up again versus having 2, which actually could impact the behavior and the patterns that the drivers play. So Josh and I were talking, and Josh believed that if we're going to do a trial period, 1 should be sufficient. And that should be able to tell whether or not they're effective. But then if we're going to do a permanent installation, then 2 speed humps might be the better approach for Ocean and View. But for trial period, 1 should be sufficient. And you'll see the patterns, the neighbors outside might hear engines rev up, brakes, and then rev up, thump, thump, so it might change the habit.
And so it would be 1 each for a pilot would be 6K each roughly?
Yes.
Okay, so 12,000 total.
And they come marked just like I had up on the screen.
Yeah.
They have all the reflective markings that are required. They come with that. And the only thing that would be needed to install with it would be signage on each side of the speed hump so that a driver can see them, because you may not be able to see them. And then, if you're really paying attention, so there needs to be a sign, and Public Works can install those.
And then you
if
you put in 1 for a trial, if it's successful and we want to put in 2, I would think we locate them slightly differently.
Yeah, I was looking at the installation guidelines for these, and there is some, you drill into the asphalt and there are bolts that, with some adhesive, so that could be removed. And it could be separated and put into a different pattern on the street.
And then you had also you sent us out the information from it wasn't really a traffic study, but it was a traffic, kind of recommendations made 2 years ago, GHD, et cetera. And so, and a number of those things haven't been implemented yet, as I understand. So I guess I really want to hear from the public on all of these ideas and things, because I know a lot of people have some, are here because they want to talk about this. So I'll be brief, but I feel like there's sort of a short-term and a long-term look at this. And the longer term is not just kind of mitigation, but it's also enforcement, which we don't have a lot of. And it may even be prevention, because we never really, I don't know that we've ever really brainstormed how do you kind of prevent having so much traffic in Trinidad. And I know that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but more bicycling, more public transportation, shuttles down to the marina, and those kinds of things. I think we could potentially brainstorm, but that would be more something long term. And I agree with Councillor Breckenridge that getting the data, making data and Eli data-driven decisions are always helpful on this kind of thing, because of course everybody's going to want their street to be safer in any way that we can make it safer. And if that is a speed hump, that's great. In fact, I spoke to Principal Nichols at the elementary school today, and they would like to have more safety for the kids. So they'd like that crosswalk to be a speed hump, and, or maybe some what do you call those little bumps that you put in front of it? You know what I'm talking about?
Rumble strip.
Thank you. Yep. Rumble strip. So that would be another option. So anyway, and we talked about buses, and they have a morning bus, but could they have an afternoon bus? Right now they can't sort that out, but so there's just a lot of kind of variations on this theme. So the question is, if that's the long term, and maybe do a traffic study, is there a short term where we say, well, gosh, we haven't piloted traffic humps. Maybe we want to pilot some traffic humps, and this might be an opportunity to do that. Doesn't mean that we're not going to put traffic humps in other streets, or to Katie's point, move them around. But, that could be a short-term solution. We won't decide that tonight because we want to hear from everybody, I guess. But anyway, so that's my thought on that. Steve, you're the chance to.
I fully agree that more data, I think yes, I'm the scientist, so that's what I do. But I think it's really important for us to hear, and then looking at the county guidelines, it actually gives us to be eligible for a speed hump, 85th percentile speed must be or exceed 32 miles an hour. I think is a little excessive, just because we're talking about streets where the speed limit is 15 or 20, 15, right? So, but it has to exceed the miles per hour. So I think that getting the data, I think, is really important. And as I understand it, the traffic gene that Josh was talking about is, it's nominal if it costs anything. But then Josh we'd have to spend some money for him to analyze the information. So that's my recommendation. But I too am very interested to hear what folks, and just to be clear, right, we've all read the emails, we've all seen the information, I think as late as 1 o'clock, something like that. So just know that if you did submit, and anyone in the Zoomosphere, if you did submit anything, we've had a chance to review that. So just know that we're coming at this with that information in our minds.
Absolutely. All right, and so that's a good segue. Let's go ahead and open to public comments regarding traffic. I don't see, I do see one hand raised in the room, and I don't see any online yet. So please come to the podium.
Y'all can work it out yourselves.
Yeah.
But do speak into the microphone just for our Zoom folk.
So I live at 806 Edwards, middle of Edwards Street, probably the fastest part of Edwards Street. And so I share the concern about the speed of traffic. It's pretty deep, fast down that street. I'm not, however, a fan of the idea of putting speed bumps. I've lived on a street where speed bumps went in, so I have the experience for a number of reasons. So, first of all, they're noisy. And the city has done a really great job on light pollution. I think it's nice and dark here, and it's fairly quiet. Once you start adding those things in, you have the hitting the speed bump, you have the sound of the springs, you have more acceleration, more braking. So, and it's just, and that's constant. So, okay, there's traffic, but at least it's steady. In this case, it becomes much more kind of up and down. For that reason, I think if you want to do some kind of a step things and find out how much traffic it is, put out some loudspeakers, let people know just a speed bump is starting to. I know that's not realistic, but I think it's important for people to realize what they're getting into. The thing that I found out when I street there were speed bumps, they're very, very biased. It makes a really big difference how high. If you drive a small car and really low to the ground, it's a very big difference to you. If you're driving a clearance vehicle, it's not that big a deal. You can just kind of rampage down them and not really care. So it's going to work for certain types of cars. Actually, they're not. A effective solution for the school. The thing that really affects the speed of traffic is ultimately the width of the street. A wide street like Edwards, people cruising. Street, especially where you get things like it slows people down. And that doesn't make a lot of extra noise, but it does cause people to slow down and pay attention. So for that reason, I mean, long term, I don't know about those other streets, and we're in favor of sure that one of these sidewalk street for pedestrians or it's sure a big fan of. Fact is, you've got the partial sidewalks. Sidewalk on one side and marked parking on the other side of Edwards. That street. But little.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you your comments about speed bumps and then there's speed humps, and they're different heights. What was your experience with bumps or humps?
These were more like humps. These are wide. You know, they're not the little Mexico. They're not short.
No,
these were relatively.
One of the distinctions is the height. Like bumps are higher.
Yeah.
Humps are. I just didn't know what your experience was.
And I don't know exactly what the height and length of these are and how exactly they would compare. Well, that's what I said.
In general,
effective certain types of cars far and whatnot. And bottom and the Burlington Street makes a huge difference. Also solves the problem. It's a nice place to walk.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
And I just have to say, I've lost fillings on speed bumps in Mexico, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
those are bumps. Yeah,
they'll lead axles and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. Number one, we do have our ASIP funds, which will be happening next year, and specifically on Edwards, we will be creating 2 crosswalks, one at Hector and one at Glendo, and that will help slow down the traffic on Edwards. And Josh next month will be able to give more information about that. Number two, I did want to comment that when I spoke to Josh over the phone and mentioned Edwards, he specifically said that speed humps will not work on because of the elevation. You can't, they only work on a level street. You can't do them on a street that's steep. So just those 2 points.
Okay, and I see Dwight has his hand up. So has someone in the room, I believe, who had a comment, and I'm gonna go to the person in the room first, Dwight, because I think he was first, but if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to you.
That's okay.
So just 1 minute.
Could I have a comment, please?
Yes, Dwight, I have one person in the room who was ahead of you. Is that okay, or?
I'd be happy to see the
Please go ahead.
The main thing, I'm happy to have the other person speak, but I can't hear him. The mic at the podium.
Interrupted. Okay, Dwight, why don't you go ahead and make your comment, and then that'll give us a second to work on the mic.
That would be good. Thank you. I'm interested in following up on the comment about speed humps on a sloping upward or downward street are difficult, or what the reason is, because that would be the first street that I would highly recommend that have, even if I don't see why, even if we have to go to a more permanent one, where you've got the crosswalks planned at Galindo and at Hector, simply have a raised crosswalk. And that there exists a number of those in front of schools in Arcata and other places. So we really ought to consider something of that sort. To me, the street that most needs speed humps or traffic slowing is Edwards. And related to that, because we're interested in mobility around town, Edwards is very unsafe for walkers. We need to have some place to get from town to the beach where people can walk, not just ride bicycles or drive their cars. And the city is a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of having an alternative walking place. Walking on Edwards is not appropriate. And the only other thing is that I highly support the collecting data. Well, there's 2 other things. Highly support collecting data. I think everybody's on board with that. But have we thought about having speed cameras? There are towns which have speed cameras. They've got a lot of pushback from many people who are angry because they get tickets. But if the word can get around very fast if we had a big sign in the front of the city that said, our streets are going to be ticketed at 2 miles above the speed limit, period. Okay, and my comment.
Better there today as well, so that's another one. And then Dwight, for the Edwards and then humps on slope, maybe we can defer that question to Josh for next month, because he's the engineer, if that's okay.
That'd be good, because there's a number of comments I took to residents about Edwards, and we need to find somewhere to slow down Edwards, period.
I think I see a lot of heads nodding, so that's a very good comment. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is, can you hear me while we're at it?
You guys hear him? Online. Just thumbs up if you can.
Okay. Worth checking. Okay. Okay. My name is Willie Stein. I live up on Himalaya Drive, and I signed on to my neighbor Rebecca's letter asking for traffic out on the frontage road. I'll speak first to Ocean. Actually, I most recently lived on Ocean before I moved to Himalaya. I've also lived on East Street, so I have some experience with both View and Ocean. I'm agnostic as to what traffic calming measures we use, and I think it's probably a well taken point about speed humps being loud, but do agree that would be worthwhile, and maybe some thoughtful scoping of other measures might be worthwhile. I also like the idea of gathering data and getting a traffic study done, particularly on the frontage road to Strawberry Rock. There are 5 little kids that live on Berry and Himalaya. Some of them are mine, some of them are hers. There's some other folks up there as well. And there are other slightly older kids that live there as well. So I think the grand total of school-age kids who are in the market to walk to Trinidad school is probably 9 kids.
I think it would be a wise decision to check what kinds of speeds and how many cars frontage road is carrying. The whole walk down Berry and to the school, we have to really keep our heads on a swivel. And I don't think I have a solution for dealing with the freeway interchange. Not really sure what we do about that. That's probably a larger problem, but it's a very clear place to have sort of a traffic calming intervention on the frontage road, particularly because there's a blind turn onto Berry Road there with some kind of funny visibility issues up the curve of the hill. And it would be great if people were not, people unfamiliar were not getting off the freeway and then kind of barreling their way towards Strawberry Rock when we go there. I would also add that whatever the results of the study, there's kind of this concept that you take the probability of a harm and the magnitude of a harm, and you cross-reference those things and use that to make decisions about preventative measures. Given the fact that we have little kids who we're taking to school, and at some point we'd like to trust them to be able to walk to school on their own, we'd really like that to be seriously considered, that there be a crosswalk or other traffic calming measure. I do see people getting off the highway and ramping speed right back up to go down the frontage road. So that would be my submission. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go next to Anna online. She's had her hand up, and then we have another comment in the room.
Hi, I am a resident of Hector, and I'm mildly concerned about the crosswalk. We can talk about that later, especially if it's raised. I wanted to second what the gentleman said about living next to a speed hump situation, because my experience with a decade of living next to speed humps, no matter how many there are, and we had about 10, is people will slam on their brakes, go over the hump, speed up to the next hump, slam on their brakes, go over the next hump, and continue that way all the way down the road. What we want people to do and what they actually do are usually not perfectly aligned. And I know that there are other options for traffic mitigation. And it would be wonderful to do a study, to get the data, and to have a conversation about if there's other options. As somebody who walks a small dog around every single street in this town, including Edwards, I don't want to, I'd like to feel a little bit safer. I'd love the Van Wyck Trail to be open, for instance, so I can get off Edwards, period. I'd love for there to be a sidewalk on Edwards, to be more sidewalks in town, period, to be more pedestrian friendly. That's a longer conversation, and I don't know the history. I'm sure there's a bunch of issues with sidewalks in the town. But I would definitely urge a very long and thorough look at the consequences of putting in speed humps, because especially on a street like Edwards, people aren't thinking about the fact that there are boats with trailers going up and down that street all day, and the trailer will clang, 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 starting at whenever the guys go down to the dock. And I think Edwards is already loud, and I don't live on Edwards, so it doesn't bother me, but I do think it should be something that should be factored into our calculus, that there is no perfect way to get humans to do the right thing. But I think that if we really look at it seriously, we might be able to arrive at a solution that does not disrupt our beautiful town quite as intensely as 2 a.m. clanging trailers.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We got a couple of rounds of applause in the room. I don't know if you could hear that.
I didn't.
All right, and we have Don at the podium.
Yeah, Don Allen, West Haven. When I first moved into Trinidad in 1983, there was an issue of kids skateboarding down Edward Street towards the harbor that concerned people. And I naively suggested maybe we could put in some speed bumps to make it less attractive. And Dave Zebo, who was on the city council at the time, and I think he used to work for Caltrans, he just said, you can't do it because it had something to do with the harbor status and Federal Transportation Highway Act or something like that. But he said you couldn't put speed bumps or bumps on Edwards in particular. Then I don't know about the other things. I mean, I've heard all the comments, and I I totally appreciate what they're saying. But anyway, that would be a question for Josh Wolf, just to make sure that if you did consider that it is legal, but I agree with some of the commenters that I think there's other things that would be better, especially if there was a sidewalk on Edward Street and then you had a couple of crosswalks and a couple of bulb outs. I think that would be pretty effective, just like it has been right in front of school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. How's my volume? Am I okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I just want to echo what Anna was saying. Transportation is my background, and it is super important to have a plan before you do piecemeal traffic calming, because you do not realize the impact it can have on within the city limits, because the effort shift will happen to the streets where you don't have traffic calming. So I heartily agree. I think finding the funds to bring in, I believe I heard Steve or someone say that GHD had someone that could come in and do a traffic study. I know with the infrastructure bill, there's a lot of funding available. There's a lot of safety funding available. As we are able to complete our projects at the harbor, you know, our hope is for traffic calming there as well. But as Anna mentioned, we have the large vehicles, the boats, the trailers, the RVs all coming to the harbor and parking. So I think it's super important to not rush into traffic calming without realizing the impacts to the entire grid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And Deep.
So Betsy Music, 607 Parker. I just want to reiterate my encouragement of feasibility study. We can't do anything without the facts. And I'd also encourage us to, like many people have already said here today, to look at all the options, not just make a reactionary one based on what we think we know, as the Councilman Brokenbridge pointed out, but what the actual data and facts are. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Broughton. I go by Ingrid, and I live at 99 Berry. I agree with a lot of the things that have been said about the study, having a comprehensive study, as well as considering all possible traffic calming measures. I think I'll just put in the plug that I don't know what the speed limit is on the frontage road. I don't know what the speed limit is on my street. I don't know what the speed limit is on most of the streets in town, because I'm only actually aware of one speed limit sign that is on Main Street under the eucalyptus tree by the gas station. So while I completely agree that having a comprehensive look and not piecemealing things along is probably the best way, I do think there's probably very little fallout from putting up some more speed limit signs. And if they were blinking like the ones in Blue Lake that remind people like, hey, the speed limit is 15 miles an hour here or whatever it is, and you're going to over that, I think that would be even better as something that could be done sooner and maybe wouldn't have as broad chain ramifications. Thanks.
Thank you.
The blinking lights can be solar, can't they? They're low cost too, you know.
So Kenny, did you like to make your comments?
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. 460 Ocean Avenue, lived on there since 1983. The problem with people speed has gotten worse since they put the traffic on. a certain number of people, Trinity, I always get those two confused. You know, if you think they're being slick and they're getting around the situation by using either an alternate way, pretty much through traffic, I think. It's a problem, but I have mixed feelings about what the best solution might be. Bombs, plane in Arcata, and say how. For me, they were fine because I just slowed right down, you know, to a real nice slow pace, and I think the noise factor is proportionate to how fast people hit them. If you go over nice and slow, it doesn't make much noise at all. You know, the faster you're going, the more your car's going to bounce. And so people that have actually experienced it firsthand, you know, that probably. The other thing, to me, it seems like we've got to decide whether we want speed humps or not. Let's get the asphalt ones to start with, because $6,000 piece for rubber ones that are only going to last how long? But what are we going to do with them? But if there are, we are going to get the temporary ones. We got to get some used ones from some other city that use them first, because I don't think they really wear out too much. But I think they are a little noisier than the asphalt ones because they kind of flop around a little more. Camera idea is really nice too. Maybe we should go super high tech and just like San Francisco or whatever. People get a ticket in the mail, say, you know, go speeding down streets, but then there's the question of keeping, you know, vandals that just turn around. But it's being talked about, and I think October meeting will be more good information.
All right, thank you. I don't see no other public comments, so I'll bring it back to the council. What are you folks thinking at the moment?
You know, I think one of the things that are interesting is when we look at Ocean and View Streets, I think we're really trying to get traffic to stop going down those streets, which, yeah, or just for safety reasons. So I really think it'd be nice to get even to look at those humps and see if we can get them in place and see if we can actually get traffic to go the other way. But I do like, I think this idea of putting cameras up in certain places might be one of the best. Great ideas tonight. They're all for my paper thing. Wow, we've got lots to work with now. So I hope you'll all come back to the office here so we can how difficult these things are, because it's unless we can find grants, we're looking at a lot of money to do a lot of the stuff. So as Jackie said, there's money out there, so maybe that's the number one thing we should do is start looking at grant possibilities so we can start taking this seriously and get us going, because it really sounds like we have a lot of people ready. It's a good time to work on it.
Good thoughts you want to share?
I'll reiterate that I'm in favor of traffic study, calming study, because there's so many people wanting our attention to their streets. I just think in the sense of fair play, it's going to fly better and be fairer to actually have actual information. I was also wondering about the things we might do that we haven't even done yet, like somebody mentioned. How about posting some, speed signs? How about blinking signs? How about I don't even know if there's a line down the middle of Ocean in terms of it's a two-way street, but people act like it's a one-lane street. What else might be done short of speed humps? So I was thinking about that too.
Just to reiterate that, I think the collecting of information is really key. And I really want to bring everyone back to while every street is important to have safety, right? I really appreciate the comment that there are more kids in town, right? Underwood, when I moved there, had no kids. Now there's kids everywhere. It's a different town, right? And the city made an intentional effort on, now you got me forgetting what street this is. Trinity, Jesus. We made an intentional effort to slow down traffic in front of the school. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Bryce, that you're noticing that since that has been done, there's more traffic on Ocean and View. And I think that's what keeps coming up, is that this conversation keeps coming up because those two streets are the most heavily impacted by the through traffic, right? So anyone can drive fast on any street, right? I love sitting on my porch like the two old grumpy Muppets up in the balcony. God damn it, slow down, kids. Why are you driving so fast? But it's not to the effect of, everybody doesn't have to drive down my street to get to the harbor, right? Or to go anywhere really, except down my street. So on Underwood. So I just really want to bring us at least back to the point that we need to focus on the main traffic through town has been affected by the effect of these traffic calming measures on Trinity. So let's keep that and make sure that we get that in our study so that we can see the effect of those efforts that have happened out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What successes have we had so we can replicate those? I guess I'm in the camp now of doing a traffic study, and I mean maybe it's traffic study light because it's getting some equipment and just at least getting a sense of volume and speed, because sometimes it seems like people are going really fast. They're not. Other times they're going really fast. They're going 50 miles an hour, and it'd be really nice to be able to clock that and know that and have that information and make sure that we expand to frontage road, for example, as well. But I guess I'd also say, so traffic study, I'd be big in favor of. I do think that often we spend time doing studies and gathering information, and we get the reports and we don't take the action. And so in this case, I guess just harkening back to what Dave shared with us, we have this road, the City of Trinidad local roadway safety plan. And there on page 32 and 33 is a whole list of suggestions that I won't go through with everyone, but I would say that maybe in October, we take kind of a look at that specific table and say, let's check some of these boxes of things that we can take action on. And some of them are things like signage, right? So, we don't necessarily do them all, but we could do some of them. So,
and not wait on those.
And not wait on those for the study, because we've already paid companies to go out and do the research and make a recommendation. So if we don't want to take the recommendation, we don't have to, but we should at least look at the recommendation and say why we're not doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I really, really appreciate the public input on this. It's a tough one. I mean, it really is all about safety and security and, quality of life. So it's important to all of us.
All right. One question. Several times people brought up the idea of a sidewalk down Edwards. Where did that fall? Not necessarily in the traffic calming study, but somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
connectivity study.
Yeah. So regarding sidewalk on Edwards, I've been here since 2019. We had a Caltrans project, which was over 700,000. A sidewalk on the south side of Edwards. And unfortunately, it didn't go through. And it was understandable because it would have made the driveways for the residents that are on Edwards steeper. Definitely, if you have a steeper drive, when they're backing out and you've got a sidewalk where people might be walking on it, you might not be able to see the people on the sidewalk. Fortunately, the cars now do have, where there's a camera and it could help, but either way, that didn't go through. We made that effort, it didn't go through. One of our council members, Dave Grover, had suggested possibly doing a sidewalk on the north side of Edwards, which may entail possibly getting a little bit of more right of way where the hillside is. That could be looked at. Naturally, we do have parking there. We can't afford to lose parking on that side of the street. And then the other side, the south side, actually has like pedestrians. So anyway, those are different things to look at. In our conversation regarding the Van Wyck Trail, we were also talking about what improvements we can do to Edwards. And ideally, even whether we open or not open the Van Wyck Trail, even if we opened it and had improvements there, it wouldn't hurt to have some improvements on Edwards, specifically if we didn't do a sidewalk on the north side of the street. And on the south side, where there is that bike lane, it's also used by pedestrians. We're talking about possibly having something to separate that between the driveways from the traffic. So there are some ways that we're looking at make it a little bit more, a little safer and a little more separate, where people wouldn't really be into that. The other thing about traffic calming and possibly bulb outs, that all makes sense. The only problem on Edwards is we don't want people where it's too narrow and you've got larger vehicles that they end up going out of their lane. And if they go out of their lane, that can create more problems. So we have to take all that into consideration. And certainly having Josh at the meeting next week, we can talk a little more about it.
Right, with that, I'm going to move on into item number 2 on tonight's agenda, which is the discussion decision regarding proclamation 2023-01, which is proclaiming September as Septic Awareness Month. And Eli, am I turning this over to you or Jennifer?
Well, we do have Jennifer here. So Jennifer is our septic guru, and she's the one who brought us Septic Sue. And when I started here in 2019, I found that, the septic situation was an important situation, especially now as we get more environmentally friendly, hopefully, as a nation. We need to make sure that we're not damaging the environment. And because of our location and things flow down with the stormwater and so on to the harbor and to the ocean, we certainly don't want that accompanied by failed septic systems. And one of the things that I encountered was saying, well, someone else is not doing it. And that was their excuse for not doing it. So when Jennifer came around and I had already addressed it with Trevor, we decided let's do something holistically where the whole city has to come up to speed and make sure that we're addressing septic. So over to Jennifer.
So just to show you an overview of September 2022, when the program started, we were at, as a town, 27% of the town had current permits, which represented about 43%. I'm sorry, about 43%, 43 permits were issued in the town as current permits. And now, a year later, September 2023, if you can scroll down. We are at 123 households have current active permits. So we're at 61% as a town. So we have made about 50% progress. We've sent letters to all the households in town that have not had permits issued. So we've made touch points with every single household at least twice if we've needed to, with touch base with everyone at least twice if we needed to. So we're down to now our last kind of, not holdouts, I won't say, but kind of our last group of people who we're working on to get voluntary compliance with the program. Working on this last set of letters that are going to go out in October now to people who have either expired permits or no permit at all, asking them to voluntarily get on board with the program again. So that's kind of where we're at. Do you have that last slide a second? Okay. And this is where we're projected to be at. This is our pending permit files. This is where we're at. I'm projected to be at 66%. These are the ones that kind of are in limbo right now with Trevor, who are files that she's currently working on. So these are where we're expected to be probably by October 1st. So it'll be at 66% as a town. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Incredible work.
Thank you. It's really, it's really, you know, it's our residents finding it important and taking action, and it's really up to, you know, the town. And it's my appreciation to all of our residents who taking action. So,
what do you think are the reasons, like the top couple of reasons for the holdouts, if you will, like the folks that, I mean, we might never make it to 100%. We'll try, but even 80%, you know, like the 80-20 rule. Are there people, I mean, without naming names, like, is there some common themes?
I think some people pump on a semi-regular basis, but they just don't feel like they need to get that extra step of the inspection and don't feel like that final piece is important, and working on educating them for that final piece. This last letter that's going to go out to them is really asking people to contact myself and putting in their game as well directly to explain to me why they don't think that they need to participate. And if they have a reason, they've got extenuating circumstances where they don't feel like they can participate and get into the program, I want to know about it. If there's some sort of extenuating circumstances or cost is an issue, I want to be able to talk to those people directly one-on-one.
Yeah, because I mean, there is a cost for the inspection. It's fairly nominal, I think.
Correct, and it's definitely less than if you had city sewer.
Right.
So, right. I want to be able to go over those pros and those, you know, scenarios with people individually. So I'm asking them to reach out individually.
And at one point, I believe there was some funding for folks to bring their septic up to code. I believe this was years ago. Is there still any available funding for that, or was that a program from the past?
That was a program from the past. Okay. There's not any specialized funding like that out there. There is some low cost loans that are available, that I have access to some program information like that I can share with people.
Right on.
Give them that information.
And I just want to make sure I'm getting the numbers right. You said in September 22, we had roughly 40 some odd permits up to their current, and now we're over 120?
Correct. We had 53 people had current permits in September 2022, and now we have 123.
Okay, so 70 permits over the last year.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah.
Right. Having gone through the permitting process myself, it's not just something you do between bowls of cereal. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I just want everyone to know 70 permits were approved this year. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after getting
it's lovely to see something that's just so concrete, you know, that you can just like really measure it and see a positive movement. So, Jack.
I was saying, I figured very personal with my septic system over the summer, since we had to dig the whole thing up, all the lease lines. I'm just curious, what happens next now? People are not cooperating with this or aren't able to do it. Is there some stage, is there something that we're going to do as a city to do something about them not doing it? what's the next plan if people are not getting?
Well, voluntary compliance is always my hope and my way, along with the education piece, which Septic Sue's been doing to hopefully educate people so they understand the importance and the why behind the program. And that's kind of why I designed Septic Sue to go along with the program to use the education piece. The letters that are going out in October, as I said, are asking people to reach out to me to explain to me why they don't think that they're going to be able to integrate into the program. In January, if people are still not able to integrate into the program, then the city is going to look at some more direct ways to communicate with people one-on-one. So yes, we're going to get a little more direct with people one-on-one.
I like it.
I like it. Appreciate your language.
Everybody, the mic has been dropped, everybody. Direct communication.
That's wonderful. Okay, so let me open to, unless councilors, any other comments or questions? Okay. Let me open for public comments then on the subject. Can't see anybody online raising their hands. Do you guys?
Usually it pops up on the top there.
Yeah, I don't my window open anymore. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. You guys, yeah, very good.
So you want, I move that we approve the proclamation 2023-01 proclaiming September 18th through 22nd as Septic Smart Week.
A second.
Okay, Katie wanted a second.
Yeah.
Okay, let the record reflect that Katie seconded that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we are going to move on to the next item, which is discussion about public outreach and awareness options for the city's leash laws. So as many of you know, we've had challenges with some off-leash, more challenges. We've had some attacks by off-leash dogs. So the city's been really trying to ramp up its efforts to do more about this. And I think, Gabe, is this one you're going to cover?
I can contribute for sure. I'll let Eli here.
Eli, do you want to pick us off? I wasn't sure who I was handing to. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've got both Dave and Jennifer here regarding this item. Yes, we've been wanting to get the word out specifically about the city leash laws and try to get people to cooperate. It's a difficult process when you're dealing with visitors, especially in the summer. We had purchased 50 small signs, scattered them around town. We intentionally did smaller signs because we didn't want them to distract from the drivers when they're driving. So it would be geared towards the pedestrians as they're walking. And then hopefully most people will and have cooperated. We've seen a lot of compliance. Since then, we've done a contract with the county, with the animal control officers, where they can randomly come into town and check things out. Also, can report things to them, and they can act quickly rather than having the process before where they would have to call the city and ask us. Specifically, we've got like one particular lady that we've noticed that doesn't have her dogs on the leash. I don't think she lives in the city. But either way, so when we see her next, we will be contacting the animal control. Other than that, I know some information is included in your packet that Gabe and Jennifer had put together regarding a radio program that's similar to what's being done at Bootleg, which is like a public service announcement. the same time gives information about the city, possibly some events, some news. It's really interesting the way it's done, and an example was produced and played it to a couple of us right before the meeting, and now part of when I turned it over, that would be one of the things. Here, so I turn it over to Gabe, and then.
So, thank you for letting us have a chance to make some suggestions. Like Eli said, this has been a collaborative process, first starting off with immediate response of what had occurred. I mean, we had dog incidents, we needed to have action. We started with the signage, direct marketing to homes, encouraging the leash law and licensing, and then now we have a contract and animal control. So we keep hearing is we want more. We're hearing that from the council. So we, other than direct marketing, we're trying to, just brainstorm different ways to get the word out. We got a new website, which would be nice. We can deploy that as soon as we get our heads wrapped around it and the power of our website. But what keeps ringing in my head is that the city wants to see more outreach to the general public, not necessarily to the people in town, because we can direct market, we can send letters to everybody in town all day. They may or may not be the problem. Two incidents as Andrea Hale brought up in the animal control the last meeting. Was that the last meeting? Right. Was that number 2 accidents? Basically from local dogs that just got away. So what are we trying to convey? What are we trying to do here? And we ran into a guy named Colin Vance who works with KDKA radio station. He stopped by and I think talked to Anton months ago about his Blue Lake campaign. Blue Lake's on the prowl for sales tax revenue. They're using radio to draw people into their community that can spend money and raise revenue. But as a radio fan myself, I listen to baseball games on the radio, and not everybody listens to radio, but I find it really intriguing how KDKA has been using creatively the radio to reach people from a public service perspective. It's something that's kind of new. I mean, usually PSAs or press releases are separate. They're usually not incorporated into the friendliness of radio. So he brought up a couple things with Blue Lake, and then it kind of got our wheels turning. We're like, well, this is an option. We didn't find a lot of other options for PR other than Katie saying she wanted to go door to door and knock and hand out flyers. We didn't really see much of that wider range of voice being projected out there to the community for people coming to visit Trinidad, whether they're semi-local, McKinleyville, Fortuna, Eureka, or from afar. So Colin, we approached Colin we asked him to come back and tell us a little more. We gave him some of the things that we are interested in as a city that we've been hearing over and over again. And the dog thing kept coming up, the busy time of the year here in Trinidad and how it can take a toll on our business community a lot too. So there was maybe some behavioral concepts in the message too that we could share with the overall public. But he had some good suggestions, and of course there's a cost to this. This is a media that we haven't really approached much from a city, but we're starting to find ourselves on the map even more. People are coming to town, how can we get the word out? And we've got some messages that we want to share. So I'll play for you just one thing that got my attention. I think at this MP3 will play from Recology. And this has to do with don't text and drive. This is Linda Wise from Recology, who is wanting to do a message because she's seeing that her drivers are, impacted. The safety of dump truck driver, trash truck drivers are being impacted by people just distracted driving. So if you don't mind, I'll play this, and then I'll play the one that they've drawn up for Trinidad. And then what we're going to try to do is just test the waters, see what you guys think, see if it's something that you want to pursue. If you want staff to develop this a little bit more, the cost is approximately $6,000. But we get, I think, 6 months worth of advertising, radio play every day, and we can always change and vary those messages depending on the season and what else is happening in Trinidad and what we want to convey to the public. So.
And as a side note, in the packet, you also included some information about.
It's going to be it's a two-part process, and I'll explain that in just a second. Hopefully this thing will play in.
$20 for those who are using electronic devices or even service tax. This is going to be one for ecology. Remember that while our algae breaths are on your routes, we stop and start often. It's an absolute track to get the body work at a safe speed. When it's safe, we all want it. I think it's a lot of magic. There's times about it's good to drop something.
Your sign is about to hit the ground.
Your Gabe Adams sign.
Yeah, you're going
Superstitious.
So here, let me try. This is a Trinidad. I want to about ready to play. And this was a draft that they did because they knew we were going to have a meeting, and they were like, "Well, let's see if we can get you something in draft format to give you an idea of what this could do." So I'll play this for you.
Enjoy the magic of the ocean and the small town simplicity is found just a few miles away in Trinidad. Hey, this is Colin from City Hall. We're thrilled to have you join us in Trinidad and the surrounding area. Our pristine beaches and vibrant community make this a truly special place. We want to ensure that everyone enjoys their time. So we kindly ask for your conscious effort to maintain the natural beauty and tranquility of our town and beaches. When you bring your furry friends to the beach, please keep them on a leash at all times. This helps ensure the safety of both your pet and other beachgoers. While we love dogs of all shapes and sizes, it's essential to manage aggressive dog behavior. Keep a watchful eye on your pet to prevent any conflicts with other four-legged friends. Thank you for being responsible and considerate. Together, we can ensure that every visit to our beaches is a memorable and enjoyable one.
Okay, so the way they have this framed, beginning, you heard, one guy's voice, which is kind of the opening and the closing. He referred to it as like a donut. The middle was the filling, and that was our dog message. So that same opening and closing would be used perhaps, but we could choose to fill it with different things. And one of the things that Colin suggested was maybe at times we can partner with another business, or if the businesses are interested in advertising, they could use that filler and then pay their own share. So maybe we don't want to play that 8 times a day, 10 times a day for 6 months straight. Maybe we want to vary the messaging.
Yeah.
So basically the proposal from Colin is that, from KDKA is approximately $6,000. You get quite a few messages. He has a whole calendar, and it can run for 6 months. And we can use it to just say whatever we want, whenever we need to say. But this is just, the one thing that came to mind that we found could be an opportunity to reach a wider audience than just our local mailers or others. And we figured this would be a place to start. See if it's something you like, or maybe just like dump it and go a different direction.
You were saying if we could run this message over and over again, will they be willing to put different messages in than just one and not be any more money?
Well, the way he explained it again, and I don't want to try to be a salesman for this because that's his job and that's a baby, right? But he said that for $6,000, we would get a big chunk, and he put the times per day for 6 months. It could be spread out if we didn't want to do it so many times. If we wanted to do it like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The off season, we want to do it less, and the busy season, we want to do it more. We can get all those weeks. But if other community groups, a land trust, a civic club, anyone else in the community, we gave him a long list of names, that they might want to fill in, they can do a la carte, and he'll take care of all of that. He'll say, oh, the civic club's got an event going on this weekend. I'm going to approach the civic club members, and I'll tell them if they want a piece of this, it'll cost X amount to do a 2-week spot. And then they'll modify and do all the production in-house. So the city's cost would be $6,000 for its base. 6 months, it plays per day, however it plays out. And then they'll go and pound the pavement to see if anybody else wants to jump on the bandwagon. And that's where that donut comes. The message at the beginning, at the end, the opening and closing are more Trinidad generic. And then the filler is whatever happens to be out. And the city would be entitled to that.
Very interesting. You listen to the radio. I don't.
Exactly.
I'm wondering. Yeah. No, I think it's a very creative suggestion. I'm just wondering who listens to the radio. And maybe my ignorance.
I'm sorry. I'm old.
Okay.
I like going into any community where I am and find the local radio.
Oh,
Right? The commercials make me laugh.
Oh,
The
that's
music
fine.
makes me laugh. The DJs make me cry. And I'm thinking where we get a lot of our folks, right? Would Kika Thunder Country 101, KNS? I don't know.
Yeah, it's on several stations.
Right, it's on several stations. I think the fact that it covers, 3 stations. All right.
Very creative.
Yeah, if you're doing nothing will change. If you do something,
Well, and what
something
Colin,
might change.
yeah, what Colin was saying too, and I totally get it, because I had heard the Blue Lake Act, and I had heard Recology, and I've heard Public Works, Tom Matson saying, hey, celebrate all you want, people, but don't drink and drive because we want you to go home safe. There's starting to be this little bit of a bandwagon, and it's creating a little sense of community. So a lot of people, when he's out selling this advertisements for his station, he's hearing people say, well, what do I get out of it? How is it going to drum up my business? And then he will say, well, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but a lot of people listen to radio, and you want to get on this public service, that you want to be as part of your community. I don't know. I had a business for a while, which I ran, and I was shocked to see how many people would come in and say, I heard your radio, and I don't know. But maybe it's just a local thing.
I think you actually got time to manage this, because you were talking about using different fillers over the 6 months.
That's a good question. Colin actually put together for us, and it didn't make the packet that came in today, or maybe it did. I'm not sure exactly.
It is the last.
He put some draft comment because we.
Oh, the merchant bias. Yeah.
And I'm really impressed at how motivated they are. They're motivated to pound the pavement, to look for other things to fill, but they're also looking and also assisting us with different things that we might want. We can, at any given time, if something comes up, we can say, put it on the radio. If something else happens, we can develop.
I think it's interesting on the radio. If I think about ads, when I'm watching TV, for instance, I have no idea what any of the ads are. They just jump to me. But on the radio, when I'm driving in my car, I listen to all the ads because I'm right in front of me, right? That's all I listen to while I drive. So I pick up advertisements from the radio much better than I do from any other source. So when you mentioned the ads, you were saying, because I'm listening to them on the radio in the car. So
And it's Colin that does so he's the one who's looking for the filling. Right? It's not
concepts.
Right.
They produced that whole thing. We just had some very generic conversations with them. Hey, dogs are our priority for us.
Right. I'm sorry, it's part of the merchant buy-in part. I think that if you were asking about time, which is a really important question about not just adding more to city staff without being thoughtful about it. It sounds like that company actually will do a lot of heavy lifting that side.
We have our public service messages, things that come up that we want to convey as a city to the community. We have access to this meeting, but he'll use that same format while he's out there in the community. So there might be commercials that sound similar, that have a similar opening and closing, kind of an authentic or more of a generic opening and closing, but then will be filled in with other community messages.
And I would imagine that a sort of a regular council agenda item is to, is there something coming up that we need to, if we decide to do this, right? What does the council think? What's our message for the next 6 months or whatever? Sure. Yeah.
The chamber could buy into this.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit, so putting my marketing hat on, I guess the question I would have for them is, who's the audience? So who are their listeners today? Are they local folks primarily? Are they, because anytime you buy advertising, usually you get all the stats. They'll tell you well, these are our listeners, they're in this demographic. Yeah.
Is the word.
Exactly. So I would be curious about that. And, you know, it's just a question of, are we reaching the right audience? You know, part of me says, give it a try. Generally with marketing, you do something more, you do a little bit more multimodal, like, right, you'll say, you know, you do radio and you'll do print and, you know, et cetera. And we don't have a huge marketing budget, right? Like we don't have one at all probably. So, you know, it seems to me like maybe doing, you know, giving it a try, we could see, you know, it could also, it's a little bit of a promotion for, I think, for Trinidad, you know, from the sound of it, it was like, it's, you know, this is a great place to come visit. We ask that you, you know, keep our beaches clean and don't like turn your dogs loose on us. But, you know, that part of it I really like.
I'd like to add to that. I was curious. We're talking about different things that are costing pretty good amounts of money. How does this fit in the budget? Are you looking at this, figuring out a place?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we generally get direction from the council. The council tells us they want to do something, and then we go and figure out how to. And we keep hearing this recurring theme. What are you guys doing about the PR? What's happening on this level? So, you know, without spending days and weeks, you know, out there pursuing different options, this one came to us. And it came to us sort of in a cloak. We weren't quite looking for it. This was a while ago. So then it popped back up because we kept hearing the council give us this energy saying, do something about this, figure this out. So this is just one proposal. I'm not sold on it. I love it. I appreciate it. I think it's good PR, like you said, for Trinidad. And I do believe in that whole community concept. But like I said, the analytics are important. I think, you know, I don't think we're done looking at it. I think this one just happened to pop up and it came up as a next agenda item, get it on an agenda. So we've thrown it out.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it's, you know, I agree with Katie, it's creative and, you know, it might be something that we want to do, maybe start with, you know, 3 months instead of 6 if we can. I don't know if that's an option or. Anyway, I think.
Well, I think having, you know, I don't know anything about marketing, so a multimodal approach. If we've got our webpage and we've got our mailer, we're already doing the mailer for general information but now we have the digital version too, because a lot of people can subscribe to the webpage notifications. I know we have to build that up.
Yes.
But if we had, you know, PSAs or somewhere on I'm just looking at the main page here, there might be a way to reinforce it, right? I actually know some folks who, you know, when they're coming to visit Trinidad, they go to the city's website to see what's going on, right? I mean, I didn't know that was a thing. So if people are doing that, I think it's wise to reinforce what they might hear on the radio, what's on the webpage, exactly. Or just to get as many people as possible.
So we can even put the audio files on the webpage and you can, you know, you can set it up with a little, and there's somebody had suggested that we have I guess it was Jack Tuttle, Councillor Tuttle was suggesting that we have like a Trinidogs part of the website. I was thinking maybe more like Critter Corner because some people have cats and they'll get upset if we just focus on dogs. No. But anyway, we could set up something like that. Yeah, just let your cats off leash. It starts getting late now. All right. Anyway, Jack West, I believe you were trying to say something. No, I'm sorry.
I think I do see. No, I didn't always. When I want to go places, I always look at the websites and find about 50% of them are worthless. To look at unless they thought it was worthwhile, because you know, you get in there, they don't have easy to build information. This would be a nice. I'm very interested in this idea, but I'm also curious if maybe we should talk to the Chamber of Commerce too. Maybe see what they think. Yeah, maybe some other sources we can share a little bit, but.
And we can also do what I would call reverse donation, meaning, you know, we give money to several groups, the chamber, the museum, the library. If they want to participate, then they can spend some of that money on this.
I like it.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go to public comment at this. Yeah, follow my voice. I think we're going to go to public comments on this topic. Please.
Hi, Rebecca Broughton, Berry Road. I don't have a strong opinion about the radio, although my household is definitely radio listeners, but I just wanted to kind of also tie this back to the traffic calming thing. Like, I feel like one of the donut pillars could be about how we want not just not aggressive dogs, but also like not aggressive drivers on our streets. And I wanted to say this earlier when we were talking about that, but I do think the way that we present the town, like right off the bat, as a town that cares about our speed or our off-leash dogs or whatever it is, because right now we seem like a town that doesn't care about what our speed looks like. I mean, the 20 limit speed sign was covered by the tree for most of the time that I lived here. And I think it recently got trimmed back, but I feel like if we send a message, like the multimodal approach, radio, signage, right when you're getting off the highway, everyone gets off the highway from homes. That would be good.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. I like that idea of including the speeding as an issue. Anything else that comes our way?
So if we are in agreement, actually, what's next step?
Well, first of all, I'll probably delivered positive feedback so far that we've received to Colin, and I'll ask him to maybe develop a few more content pieces for us to review. There is a bit of identity, as you've noticed. Trinidad's identity is kind of framed in this, and I think as much public input as possible is, again, never a bad thing, because chances are we might okay their identity that they're putting out there, like Trinidad's beaches are this and warm and Trinidad's friendly. I think we can all agree that we need more positive energy, like Rebecca was just saying, like, hey, how we feel as locals about this community.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people here right now, and you never know. There's always somebody out there who's going to say, why didn't you say this? Don't advertise anymore. We don't need any more. Or something to that.
That could come up. That's true.
Yeah. So I think maybe another meeting, just follow up, maybe add a few bullet points of the content that we'd like to convey. Maybe ask Colin to develop that intro a little bit more. Maybe offer 2 suggestions. I hate the idea of having like a committee, but maybe like 1 or 2 people, like a small working committee can be developed. I mean, I'm happy to do it. I'm staff, and I'm happy to participate, but I think having some other input. I know Betsy's over here, like, yeah, okay. But the business community too. They might be very concerned at what that message is. Yeah. They might be more willing to buy in if they feel comfortable with what's being conveyed, as opposed to, not that we're trying to act as a little chamber, as a public chamber, because there is a chamber already. We're just sharing that donut, so to speak, because we have purchased for the city its own message, and then there's room for other community members to get in on that, whether it's a business or a community group. And then again, it starts to form Trinidad's identity out there in the ether. So I'd say maybe develop it a little bit more and possibly come back with some more content.
I think that sounds great, and maybe we may want to broaden it, just talk about that, and also anything else anything else that we're doing related to this, because there were some other things, like we tried the leash library idea that Jack Tuttle had suggested. We're going to do something on the website. Eli mentioned the signs and the contract with animal control. We might want to just kind of package up the whole thing, everything that we've done, and then this is a piece of it. And it's kind of the umbrella of getting the message out. So,
and even like when I was mentioning some of those groups like the museum, I think it would be great to put the word out there specifically like about what it has to offer, because I think a lot of people just don't realize it. Yeah. And the Native American history and the fact that they have the canoe that was done by Axel Lindgren there and so on. These are neat things that are for the benefit of the whole county, that they can enjoy and appreciate. So I think it's great. And since we do have Betsy here, I would like to have her give us some of her input from a business. That's very valuable.
So this idea was brought to me about a week ago. And I find it to be a very interesting, that has been the main vernacular here tonight. I agree, it's an interesting idea. My background is of many things, sitting on the Visitors Bureau Board of Directors for Sonoma Valley, as they rebranded themselves from a snarky comment about their neighbor to the east of them, Napa Valley. And, you know, identifying who we are and deciding who we want to be to our community within this borders, to our community surrounding us, and the people that we invite into it is very important. That's a very important message. We don't want to be known as the most unfriendliest town in America. That's not something I want to hear or be expressed. But it is really, it's interesting to hear his take on, in just a small short of time. It sounds really great. And I can see where it could benefit us, but I think we do have to be on the same page, the community, the business community, who we are, and yeah, who we want to be. Any other question, Eli?
No, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's worth pursuing, absolutely. But I would be happy, I agree, a committee made up of a few community members of varying backgrounds would be excellent. It's the only way you're gonna vet it, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's really about our brand, our identity, and how do we want to express that?
It is. And you know, a few years ago, the chamber did a really good job with Explore Trinidad. But they had more financial resources then, and they had more community or business participation. Right now, they're really being held together by a couple of very busy, very strapped folks. So, you know, we also, it's about money at the end of the day for all of us, right? The city and the chamber. And the chamber has really been a social organization over its years. I've sat on that board in the past, but it isn't quite like a bureau, right? It doesn't have that quite the same legal authority to its membership.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So maybe we can have it as Trinidad City that cares. So we care about when you have your pet here. We care about the other pets that are around you. We care about the streets and make sure that, you know, people are safe. And, you know, not only our residents, but our visitors. You know, we just want to be a fun, happy place for everyone. We don't want to have tragedies here.
So this was just a proposal brought up by Colin. Blue Lake, like I said, they created the template. So as you heard, Recology had their own show. Public Works does their own commercial. Blue Lake was a template for this combo because Blue Lake, as a city, is trying to promote commerce. Whereas we're not necessarily trying to promote commerce. In fact, I think some of Jennifer's pavement pounding resulted in most of these businesses saying, we don't want to advertise in the summer. We're plenty busy already. So Trinidad can, you know, this is something we can do in two different ways. We can go alone, have our own message, have our own public service style friendly developed messages, or the template could stand as an opening and closing, and Colin can use that as a way to go to other. We're not doing this. We're not the ones necessarily pounding the pavement, seeing if other businesses want to get involved. It's out there. They can contact Colin if they decide they want to get involved, but the message would be somewhat similar because it's a template, how they produce it. So that's why there would be some coordination needed.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think it sounds like what we need to do, you know, folks in general are very positive and supportive, and we want to maybe look at it a little more information in our next meeting as part of the dog discussion, but also maybe more public safety to the point about the speeding and so forth. And then decide whether it's a city kind of brand, community brand or community and business, it's all one, you know, that kind of thing. So there's some.
And encouraging the chamber to take this up, right? If we keep talking about the businesses, well,
yeah,
there's the chamber, right?
Exactly.
And perhaps the chamber can weigh in on this, because this is a sub segment of, you know, it's 3 radio stations. It's not, you know, not a comprehensive plan, but it is something that's real. So plus, if we're gonna match it with the webpage and our own digital presence, so perhaps another council meeting would bring someone like Colin and the chamber together, who's already had some time to kind of talk this through, so that it's more of a I don't know, comprehensive presentation.
And the other thing is the timing is good because, you know, like you said, we didn't want to get more businesses, you know, more people, you know, because the business is already busy in the summertime. So this is like the off season. So in that sense, that would be good.
And during the busy time, they're coming anyway. So why not have a message of you know, positivity and whatnot? I mean, it actually works. So.
And the other thing is, I think, do we the message from the radio, because if you look up there, you see that our audience is.
Yeah. Well, on that note.
Before we move on, because I don't know, can I draft that hearing to Trinidad residents about the leash law? And
we did that.
Yeah, it went out.
Yeah.
We did it. Yeah, and we told people about the leash law and everything, so they went every resident.
Well, one of the things that I don't want to cover is that people aren't reporting aggressive dogs.
And we did mention in there to report, because we said that we wouldn't know unless you tell us.
Yeah.
Because we had that incident on Wagner Street where some of the neighbors knew, but the city never knew.
Did that go out in May? When did that go out?
Yeah, right after that incident.
Yeah, and I'll double check to make sure. I think it's on the website on the animal control, under animal control.
But there was like a lot of information in that 1-page letter. So we should put at least some of that information on the website. One of the advantages with this, I mean, yes, it is 3 stations, which is good, but also the fact that we have reached our residents, but a lot of these issues with dogs, you know, are coming from some outside the area, specifically the poodle thing. But to let the people outside the city know that this is something that we want to address.
Trinidad and slow down.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to move us along to future agenda items. Are there any agenda items you want to tee up?
I've got one. So I've heard back from our community ambassador connected folks with the city of Arcata, and I've got interest from the city of Blue Lake, who responded about an hour ago, a couple hours ago. So I'd like to, and I want to hear from the folks of Blue Lake, because I think it would make a lot more sense to bring several cities in for training instead of just one, but we are gaining some ground on that. I know there's no one left on the screen, so I don't know why I'm looking up there, but I do want to bring that back as a future agenda item, and so I'll work with Gabe and Eli and Cheryl on when and what that looks like.
Yeah, I'll just go real quick. I just know I wanted to make sure we got the word out. Sherry Humboldt, we needed to get on the Trails Committee. I thought we were going to do it this meeting, so could you make sure that gets on to the next the next trail meeting? Yeah, she has not been. She is not part of it. Yeah, officially part of it.
As a year.
Yeah. So, thank you.
So I don't know if this is the appropriate, but the Van Wyck Trail and the idea of Edwards, a trail, a sidewalk, a separation, whatever is feasible. I mean, we're hearing over and over again that about these 2 items, and to make it a discussion item and get some actual actionable process.
Yeah, so for Van Wyck, we have to have an answer within 6 months, right? So it may be a future agenda item, maybe not for next month yet, right?
Yeah.
But what would we be waiting? What would be?
But Edwards would be for next
Yes.
with Josh.
But why would we wait on them?
Well, because we have to develop something to bring to the council.
You have to.
Either permanently close it or permanently open it.
Yeah.
And to open it requires a massive amount of work, and to close it also has permits and whatnot. So both of them have a lot of background stuff to come up.
Remember, we also have.
Which is in the bailiwick.
Yeah, we, like I said, we had the meeting, on Monday with the city engineer and the city planner and myself. The next week, we're meeting with the Coastal Commission, the Arcata staff. But after that, we want, some of the ideas that the engineer could at least have something like, this is what could work, then we could bring it to the council.
I think that's a wrap.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.